Hello, welcome to Weird Reads with Jason White. That's me, of course, your host. Today, I am very happy to have a guest I've been meaning to read and have on the show for a long time. Today, I welcome Katherine Silva to the show. Thank you so much, Katherine. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Do you mind giving yourself a quick introduction? Because I forgot to write one down. I just noticed right now.
I can do that. So, hello, friends. I am Katherine Silva, Kat for short, and I am an author of grief and existential horror mainly, though I can divert into other subgenres here and there. But I'm a main author. I identify as Ace, and I have been writing horror since 2010. So I've been in the industry for a while.
Nice. Now, just as an icebreaker, I noticed I was being a creep, and I was going through your Facebook profile today, and I noticed that your most recent post that I saw anyway was it showed a mug with ghosties on it.
Oh yeah.
And you mentioned that you were listening to music while writing, and so I'm always interested in that because I'm a writer too. And I'm very finicky about music and writing. So what kind of music do you listen to while you're writing?
So it really depends on the project. Some of my hard and fast, always works no matter what, is ambient, soundtrack music. So often things that don't have words in them, that are just kind of creepy and unsettling, and they almost sound liminal. I guess that's hard to describe, but it just always conjures these images of these sort of vast spaces. And the one that I always go back to no matter what, and what I was listening to yesterday morning, was the soundtrack for a little computer game called Limbo. I guess it's not just computer, it's video game. And it's a black and white, just side-scrolling game about a little boy that you're negotiating through what's supposed to be limbo or the afterlife. And it's a puzzle platformer. And the music is just very stark and just kind of nurtures all kinds of frightening feelings. And it's composed by Martin Stig, still don't know how it's pronounced, Anderson. And he also did music for Inside, which is another game. And so those two I've been going back and forth with.
Yeah. That's sort of where my angle when I said when I'm writing, I can't have music that has words to it or favorite songs of mine, because instead of writing, I'll be singing along and pounding my fist, and and I think it can be more of a distraction. But if you find that ambient type music, you can find the zone sometimes so much better.
Yeah, I get weird about it. I will just put the same song on repeat.
Yeah.
And I will go for hours if I can with just the one song. And sometimes I can do it with songs with lyrics, because you just kind of blot it out at some point. You've listened to it so many times. But yeah, normally that's my go-to.
I think it depends if how emotionally attached you are to that song. Because if I'm really emotionally attached to a song, it's going to pull me out of the zone, and I'm not going to be able to focus.
Yeah.
Being the creep that I was also on your website, and I noticed that you have playlists attached to a lot of your books. I thought that was really cool. Because I didn't go through all the songs or anything, but I did play some samples, and I was just wondering, how do you create these lists? Do they come while you're writing the books, or do you kind of sit down after you're done? And
no, it's a little bit of both, I guess. Most of the time, it's when I'm writing a book, a particular song either inspires a character or a scene. a lot of the time I can sit there and listen to music and then sort of see or envision what scene I want to write along to it, and that's generally what happens. That's why it ends up on the soundtrack. And then sometimes I'll get to the end of the book and I'll of the writing phase anyway, and I'll go through the editing phase and I'll think of something there too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the majority of those playlists are just things that I was listening to while I was writing that I felt inspired by.
Nice. Getting to how I was introduced to you, I was first introduced to you actually, I think, through TikTok. I follow you there, and I remember seeing I when I first joined TikTok and started actually enjoying TikTok. Mm-hmm. I followed a whole bunch of writers, and you were one of them. And you used to have like these funny little skits that you used to do. Oh God,
yeah.
What happened to those?
I haven't done those in so long. I had fun with them, and then I get to a point. I feel like a lot of writers get to this point where they're like, I don't like being on camera. Like, I don't like. It's like trying to come up with that kind of like funny content sometimes is really hard. Uh-huh. And then also just this like I don't know if anybody's getting anything out of this, like I'm getting anything out of this. So I did several, and then things kind of dropped off viewership wise. Right. And then I was like, okay, like I don't need to be on every single platform. Like trying to juggle TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and Threads and Blue Sky. It's just a lot. So I did kind of like stop using TikTok. I still have it on my phone, and occasionally something goes up every once in a great while, but I think it'll probably be a while before I return to that kind of skit making.
Yeah, they're always fun to watch, though. I'd always stop and watch and see what you're going to do next. So we're here to talk about you, Kat, and as I mentioned before, I started reading the Deadlands trilogy, and I was going to read it. It was just like for a summer read, right? Just for fun. Mm-hmm. But about halfway through the first, they're like short novellas. I was about halfway through the first one. I was like, holy shit, this is really good. And then I emailed you right away once I had that thought and asked you to come on. So the show was meant to be geared towards that, but I ended up, in researching you, found out a whole lot more than I realized. So I thought we'd talk about you a little bit as well.
Sure.
So I want to know, what is your horror origin story?
So I've always been a fan of spooky things. As a kid, I was always pulled towards the spooky 80s and 90s movies and TV shows. I loved Halloween. It's my favorite time of the year. Grew up in a small town, so Halloween was usually a pretty big deal. And so I just always had this affinity for the spooky. And even as early as like first grade, I have these stories that I would write that were about like haunted houses or ghosts or things like that. I just really enjoyed writing about them. Nice. And I think in 7th grade, or maybe it was later than that, it was earlier than that. It was 4th grade. I had teachers that would encourage writing of stories, and so I wrote a horror story about a stingray, which we hadn't lost Steve Irwin at that point, so maybe it was a foretelling the frightening things about stingrays, but
it's prophecy.
Yeah. So, and then from there, I wrote horror, or, sad horror was definitely a thing that I didn't realize I was drawn to until I wrote The Wild Dark in 2021. And then I was like, yeah, pretty much everything you've written up until now has been sad in some way or another. So I guess that is kind of my subgenre that I'm drawn to.
I was curious about that because I've noticed a lot of your books have that grief horror tag on it. And I was just wondering, like, because I'm kind of pulled towards the same thing. But when I'm writing, it tends to come out more silly, more fun and silly centered, if that makes any sense. Like, I like doing gory things.
Gotcha.
But I have written some serious stuff, and those are the ones that I like the most, though. So I'm wondering, what is it about the sadness that pulls at you to write it?
I don't know. I think there's just something like fulfilling about the ending of it all that gets to me. Like, I have always been drawn to stories where something bad happens to somebody and then they're able to fight through it and figure out a way to live with it better. And that goes back to films and TV shows and books. And so there's just something really nice about a story where somebody overcomes their inner grief. And I think I just have been drawn to writing that because, I've got things that maybe I'm also trying to work out within myself, and I feel like I'm getting some kind of cathartic movement through writing it. But also there's just something that kind of stirs in my gut that makes me feel better when I write about that kind of thing. Yes. So yeah, it's hard to describe. It's really hard to describe.
I think I know what you mean with that stirring in your gut. Like it's not necessarily like I'm speaking on my own here, but it's not necessarily correct. But you just know that you've nailed something that you wanted to say.
Yeah, I like writing things that make people feel something. Also, it's not like I enjoy writing horror. I've never been a writer of like lots of gore necessarily, like like some people, but I do like to induce feelings of dread and anxiety and sadness and compassion, and that all goes hand in hand with writing grief horror. And also the questioning of the existential bit of it, which is like the figuring out where I stand in the midst of everything going on around me, and what does death mean, and all of that jazz. So
yeah, it's I think it's easier to write maybe in this day and age because of everything that's going on in the world right now. It's every day is a new nightmare. And you can just it's like there's story after story of people who are going through terrible things right now, and there's that fear that you're also going to go through it. And I think that fear is something else that pushes some authors, myself included, to explore the possibilities, like the bad possibility, like when things could go completely south.
Yeah, there's places I won't go, in my writing that are maybe a little too close to things that are currently happening. I I want people to be able to escape into the story without feeling like they're just rehashing a news story, I guess, is the, like, there's a lot of bad going on, and the last thing I want to do is make it feel like they're, I don't know, not finding an escape in my story.
Mhm.
So
You mentioned hope earlier. Is hope, at least offering hope to the reader, important?
it is. There's I play off and on with that because I do think that especially now it's a really good theme to throw into writing.
Absolutely.
But I have written things before where that nihilistic point of view where you're just kind of like, yeah, it's all senseless, and there really isn't any reason for the things that happen or why they happen, and I like that kind of writing too, but that has its place in certain things, and this has its place in certain things, and I think I'm kind of on the middle of a hope journey, I guess, in my writing stuff. So that's kind of the stuff that I'm writing right now anyway. Tries to infuse hope.
Yeah. I kind of felt that with the Deadlands and Vulpine Curse, but we'll get to that shortly. I want to go back. I just wanted to know, because this is something I ask all my guests when they're on for the first time. I love knowing what they read when they were a kid, not just what they read, but I want to know, like, the writer or like a group of writers that made you want to become a writer yourself.
Yeah, I when I was a little kid, a lot of the stuff that I would read were I think Barbar the Elephant was a a big one.
I read that too, actually.
And a lot of, strangely enough, a lot of books that did not use words, like picture books, were huge. Like Carl, the Rottweiler, all of those books, Tosca, the cat, things like that were huge. And then, we get to that age where I'm finally starting to introduce myself to new things, and it got to be things like Animorphs, Goosebumps, certainly, Nancy Drew, which my mom and I read together.
Nice.
And then I was lucky enough to have a library that was within walking distance of my house, so I could just walk up there and check out basically whatever I wanted, which led to checking out a lot of books that maybe were beyond my age at the time. So I was reading Michael Crichton and John Grisham and God, I'm trying to think what else. I think I took out Children of Men at one point.
Wow. That's a pretty heavy book there.
It's maybe not, not for the age intended. But then I also was reading, I think in high school, some of the books that I most identified with were vampire novels, believe it or not. Things like Amelia Atwater Rhodes. I did read Twilight, and I liked Twilight. Blood and Chocolate was another big one for me. Like the paranormal romance book was becoming a thing. And then it exploded and got crazy later. But and it wasn't until 2020 that I really started reading horror, like mainstream horror. I was reading a lot of everything else before then, a lot of nonfiction. Like Devil in the White City is one of my favorite nonfiction books. Anthony Bourdain is one of my favorite authors. People and his cook. Oh my god, I forgot the name of the book. It's terrible.
I told you about that mind going blank thing.
Oh God, Kitchen Confidential. It's one of my favorite books. Also, like just reading people's voices and sort of pulling all of that in. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. That was it. I was trying to segue.
Well, I can segue here because you talked a lot about vampire fiction there, and your first, I believe, your first release was Vox, which is the beginning of a vampire series, and that's, I guess, reflective of your love for vampires. Now, when it comes to a love of vampires, you're very welcome here because I love vampires as well. I even read Twilight. I didn't read the whole series, but I read the first book, and I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it enough to continue.
Yeah, I mean, again, I was 15 when I read Twilight, so that was the age intended.
The time, yeah.
And then I think I went to college, and I remembered that, or I found out there that there were more because I hadn't heard that there were more, and so I got New Moon and I read it, and I liked it better than the first one because it was sad, and that was the whole like impetus of it, regardless of the fact that it was, some toxic shit also going on. But yeah, and then most of my vampire love did not come from literature. It came from TV and movies and video games, of course, with Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which is a huge inspiration behind Vox, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, of course. So I had those two things in mind when I was working on this. And I just kind of was like, I want to write my own vampire world. I want my own set of rules and everything.
And do you feel you satisfied that that need, or do you think you'll ever?
No.
Do you think you'll go back to writing vampires?
Oh, I absolutely didn't satisfy it. Mostly because like those books came unfortunately at the end of the vampire trend, which was like that 2010 era. And I didn't know a thing about marketing then, so no one read them. Like they just flopped. And it took me several years to figure that out, that they weren't, I hadn't gotten to a point where people knew me. I wasn't getting the books out there distributed well. So
it was like back in 2010 around there, right? And that was a turning point in the publishing history. So I imagine that at that time it was probably looked down upon to self-publish.
Yeah, I mean, it was becoming more and more, I guess you were finding more and more people who were doing it, but yes, there was a stigma surrounding it that was pretty heavy, though I don't think that was anything I ever had an issue with necessarily. It was mostly just the fact that I didn't know how to market my stuff, and limited resources. I couldn't like go travel to shows in different states necessarily and show it off. So no, I definitely do have ideas for other vampire or, like vampire things that I'd like to write. But I'm also a little gun shy about it now because I've gone through that that fright of like, hey, I wrote 3 books and no one read them. So that's always just a really hard thing when you're a writer is really busting your ass, to pardon my French, to write something and you put all this effort into it and then you put it out there, but because you don't know what you're doing, it just no one reads it. So
I know exactly what you mean. I've been there. But how has your writing changed since that first book to what you're writing now? How would you say you've evolved?
I mean, when I wrote that book, I was very concerned with minute details. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew every little thing that was in this room, or what this person looked like, or, I wanted to create the environments, to recreate the environments in words on the page. And so everything was hyper detailed, and I focused on using words that maybe the majority of people didn't know, or like I was trying to write to impress versus trying to write to actually tell a story. And so that hyper detail, I've now swung to the direction of minimalist writing, which I would very much say Undead Folk is very minimalist. And I like the idea of telling a story and not giving the reader every single component, and letting them figure things out. Just letting the wheels turn. So I don't know. I think that I'm finding more ways to have fun with writing in terms of experimenting with it, with form, with storytelling, with everything. And I just want to keep doing that.
Yeah, well, I found that your prose is beautiful. I really kind of like fell into the prose, and that was part of the reason why I fell in love with Undead Folk so quickly. I was just like, this is awesome. Like, this is incredible. And the storytelling, your style of storytelling was just great. But whenever I run into an author who writes in this sort of beautiful style, I aim to do that myself to a degree. And so I have to ask this question: how do you find yourself structuring the language within your stories?
It depends on the story. This one, Undead Folk, I knew going into it that I wanted to play with which words I used, how I described people, because I wanted to mislead. And then when the truth is revealed, I wanted it to be like oh shit, that's been the thing this whole time, I just didn't notice. Like, spoiler, not spoiler at this point. In Undead Folk, there are moments where I use father and dad, and I interchange them. And to the lay person who's just reading, they might assume that this is one person. And in reality, it's 2 different people that are being spoken about.
Yeah.
And you don't
husband and husband.
And you don't get that until you get to the end. So that in itself was fun, and that was easier to do in a short form story, like a novelette like Undead Folk. So again, just it depends on the story, but just and then heavily editing as well to make sure that things stay consistent. But that's,
Do you find yourself? Sorry, go ahead.
No. You're good.
The words just popped out. But do you find yourself playing with the language when you're going through like edits?
Sure, absolutely, yeah. There is a saying that is called "write drunk, edit sober," and it's a fair saying. Editing is where I do some of my best work. Like, I can get really caught up in the writing portion, just trying to get as much down as I can, because I don't want to forget anything. And then going back over it and editing and cutting things and refining things is really where the story gets its legs. So it's very important, and it's one of the more fun parts of the process for me.
Yeah. Another thing that really impressed me about your work is your characters. They're so emotionally layered, and I'm just wondering, how do you create a character? Like, what goes into creating a character? For if you were just to start a new book right now, how would you go about creating the character? Is it like, do you hear them talking to you, or do you just have like the story idea and the character that comes along with it?
So it depends. It's generally, I will have standout characters where I can hear them saying whatever I need them to say. They have a voice and I can hear it. And then other characters just present themselves easily. Like, I know who they need to be for this story to make sense. Like, Janet was a character that I didn't have any trouble figuring out, because I knew that she was going to be very standoffish and not let anybody in. And writing that is just kind of easy for me, because I can be that way too. And whether writers realize it or not, you're always pulling pieces of yourself and putting them into characters. But often enough, when I'm creating a character, I will find some real life version, usually based on an actor or portrayal that I've loved. And I'll take that and be like, what if this was here in this character? What might they say? What might they do? It's not that character necessarily, as much as it is that type of character in this situation. So when I wrote Vox, my main character was based off of David Tennant's The Doctor.
Okay.
And I wanted an evil, like a not necessarily evil, but I wanted a character who wasn't good or bad, just had a very like ambivalent identity, with that same playfulness that he showed on that TV series, in this application. So that was where and how I applied that. And the same with Amos in Undead Folk. There's a character in a film, bit part, that I really, really enjoyed. And he was this like super sarcastic dad. And who just like kind of messed with his kids a lot. Like, and I liked the idea of that. And I wanted to just stick that in this undead animal and see what happens when played, and then play it against this other character. So a lot of it is trial and error, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it works really well for Undead Folk.
Yeah. Undead Folk, that's the first book of the Deadlands, sort of a trilogy, but Vulpine Curse is definitely in that world as well. But can you give us a rundown what the Deadlands series is about?
So The Deadlands is a trilogy of books, which is about a young woman who is searching for revenge on the people who took her parents from her. And that's putting it kind of broadly, but essentially she was orphaned at a young age, and lived with this sort of traveling group of survivors, and it's a dystopian world where drought is the main issue. So, it's very dry. There's not a lot of resources for water. And she has this ability to use sort of a backwoods magic to bring back dead souls into dead animals, or dead things anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's her story about how she utilizes this and also learns more about her past, to find and get revenge on these people that took her parents from her. So that was how it started, and originally it was only meant to be one book, but gears keep turning. You fall in love with characters, you don't want to let them go, you've got ideas, and I kept going.
What made you continue it? Because I've heard you talk about like the the Wild Dark, that series, and how you said you were going to maybe write in that world again, but then Undead Folk came out, and then two more came out. So what makes you continue a series rather than not?
So what's difficult is I'll continue a series if I feel like there's more story to be told. And the Wild Dark did end with the Wild Fall, and that story was completed. And there is still stuff I could write from the universe of the Wild Dark. Certainly Dan and Andy could have another story. I get bugged at work by real life Dan about that all the time.
Cool.
But with Undead Folk, the idea came up while I was recording a podcast with my friend Lucas, and I was like, yeah, I really could write another one. Like there was a sort of resolution at the end of Undead Folk, and really I am all for people, if that's the kind of resolution that you're good with, then you don't need to read the rest of the books, because that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But most often what happens in a second book is that there's a new problem, or there's a new thing that happens to cause things to kind of fall out of equilibrium. And that's what I decided to have happen in the second book. And I went about writing Dead Folk in a very different way than the first one, because I wanted it to feel more nonstop action.
Yeah.
I wanted it, and a lot of people have said that it kind of feels like a video game almost. Like
I laugh because that's actually one of my questions.
Yeah, and
each book feels like a level up.
Yeah,
and it like the challenge gets harder too.
Yeah, and that's like you're always trying to one up the last book, and with Dead Folk, that's probably one of the easiest books that I've ever written, because it just flowed so easily for me. Like, writing action scenes is something that I really enjoy, and I don't do it as much as I used to. But also the idea of just this young woman like beating these guys to shit is awesome to me.
It's awesome. For sure.
And when I was writing it, I was also like, okay, this can end with this book. And this is what I had intended to do. And then I waffled on how I was going to finish it. And then I decided that I needed to have it end a certain way. And if I did that, then it was going to require another book. And that was entirely for emotional gravitas. Like, it kills me because this one review I got, I know you're not supposed to harp on reviews, but I did have somebody who got mad at me because they were like, why didn't you just write it all as one book?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know at the time that I was going to be writing all of this. Like, it wasn't planned.
Yeah.
But also somebody else who left a very nice review who said that there is that emotional gravitas after each one.
Yeah.
That it's its own story, it's its own thing. And if they all were together in one book, just digested, it might not feel the same. Even though that is happening.
I can completely agree with that, actually, because as you mentioned, that one positive review says that you get like an emotional reward sort of after each book. And I think honestly it would ruin it if you compiled it all together.
Which unfortunately is happening.
Which, but it could work too, but I like them as novellas, like separate novellas. But seeing it like compile, it's different if you know going in, knowing that this was all separate, and now it's just compiled into an omnibus. But if it was released that way, it would have had a completely different feel.
Yeah, released as just a one novel, it would not feel the same at all. And so yeah, I did what I did.
Now, writers hate this question, and I get it, but I like the way ideas formulate in writers' heads. Creative people, not just writers. I like to know how things are created. I like to know where it came from. So I was wondering, do you remember what the original idea for the Deadlands was and how it came to you?
Yeah. It was supposed to be, originally I had the idea of doing a short story collection, and this was going to be the story that was happening in between the other stories to kind of bind everything together. And at some point, I'm just not a prolific short story writer. It's a skill that I would like to improve at, and I'm just not there yet. And so my writing short stories just doesn't happen on a very quick basis. So the idea of having a short story collection would have meant that this whole project would be years in the future. And who knows if the idea for that story that was supposed to be, threading through all the other ones, if I would still feel the same way about it then as I do now. So I decided in a moment of desperation last year, when I really needed money because I had my basement flood, and my hot water heater broke, my furnace got flooded and had to be repaired. So I had all of these issues, and I was like, okay, I need to do something. So I wrote Undead Folk as a novelette instead of as a series of short stories for a short story collection. And it was going to be an exclusive, hardcover edition that I put out at AuthorCon, which I was going to in Williamsburg.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put it out. I made the cover for it before I wrote the book, which I have joked about this. You don't ever do that. Just don't. I made the cover and then I shared it and was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And lots and lots of people responded to it and were insanely excited about it. And then I had to write it. And I did. I wrote it very quickly and edited very quickly because it's a very short book. It's only like 70 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And then was very lucky enough to have people like Ross Jeffrey and Red Legault and Candace Nola read it and blurb it for me before it released. And so that was the origin story.
I find it funny. Well, not funny. Like you went through a pretty hard time there with the flood in your basement that took out your water heater and furnace.
Mm-hmm.
I had something similar happen, just so you know. So I'm not laughing at you, but I don't know. I don't think you guys, because Maine is pretty far away from us, but we had a huge ice storm in the spring or late winter, and it took out a lot of stuff, and it ended up flooding our basement, and it took out our water heater. But that's not my reference here. My reference is like the story ends up being about an apocalypse where there's a serious drought, and lakes and oceans are drying up, and so it's like maybe you're taking revenge on water.
Well, it's funny. I don't even know if I was aware of that necessarily, but I had another book that I was writing at the time that was about flooded United States, which is also coming out. So I already had something that I was doing that was the opposite. And when I was thinking about writing Undead Folk as part of that short story collection, I had always pictured there being like marshes and bogs and things like that. And then for some reason it just kind of took a more Western tone. The whole thing took a more Western tone, so naturally it went drier because of that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. It's not until I think book 2 where we learn of what's going on in the world. I don't think the first book really mentions too much about like it being dry. It just seems dry as we're traveling with Janet. But then in the second book, it starts to mention that like there's hardly any water.
Yeah, and it is talked about in the first one, but not extensively. Like there's mentions of the fact that the pond in the backyard has been reduced to just this little puddle of water, and then when they're going out to the hospice center, Janet is explaining to Amos what's going on. What's happened. And the thing that I do not explain is where all of the rich people went. Because it's alluded to, it's basically stated that they left. Mm-hmm. And hysterically at the time, it was that they had left the planet. They had gone into space and left. Because they could afford to jump on a bunch of rockets and do that.
Yeah.
And that was before the election. So.
Well, right now I wouldn't mind if, certain rich people would just go to another planet.
It'd be great. Yeah.
It certainly would be great. I know that you're a pantser, but while reading The Deadlands, I noticed that there's a lot of interesting lore. So I was wondering if that comes to you while you're writing it, or do you end up pausing somewhere and saying, "Okay, I got to work out the lore."
It's kind of just as it goes along, and then the trick is to make sure that it stays consistent through the rest of the books. So
I also love I love Janet or Ella.
mhm,
She's a fascinating character. She's very ruthless in her pursuit of
mhm.
her revenge. I was wondering, you mentioned earlier that some other characters will like that you've consumed will influence characters of your own. So I was wondering if there's any characters that influenced Janet.
Um, Honestly, not really. Janet, typically with my main characters, um, I do have something that I pull from. Janet's one of the few where I was just kind of like, yeah, I know who this is right off the bat, and I didn't really pull from anybody necessarily. I knew what I wanted that character to be, and I knew what she had been through to put her into her mindset. So I don't know, she was just very seamless and easy to write. Um, and kind of an anomaly, I guess, in reference to a lot of my other characters that I do find other inspiration from.
Hmm. Oh, Vulpine Curse. I read that last, and I did not expect it to be in the Deadlands universe. I thought it was just a one-off on its own, and then all these characters. So I was like, "Oh my god, okay." So what was the idea behind writing Vulpine Curse?
I really, really enjoyed writing Hugh in Nothingland, and I liked a lot of the characters that I wrote about in Nothingland, and I wanted to bring them back. But I also was really interested in writing Hugh's story between what happens to him, uh, kind of after he and Ella separate and the moment that they're reunited. And it was also this opportunity to write a very transgressive novel
Mm-hmm.
or novella, which I have not experimented with in the past. Uh, Much more violent, I would say, more gore than I usually write. I mean, it was a departure from my typical style, um, but I really wanted to just take a chance on it and see what it was like to write something like that. And I played a lot with that one too, just with language and mostly with formatting. That one I I had a lot more fun in the formatting,
Mm-hmm.
in the paperback.
Okay.
And I basically had to write it as I was formatting it because that's it all tied in together. Um, so
I think I might have to get the paperback now. I have it all
yes,
on my Kobo.
some of it translated okay to ebook, but not, certainly the font that I used, some of the images that I included, like, yeah, it's a whole other uh, experience in paperback form.
And it's a very vicious story. Like
Yeah.
you get an idea of who Hugh is before we get to Vulpine Curse, but when we get inside Hugh's head, it's wow. It's like ooh.
Mhm. Yeah. One thing to keep in mind with the Deadlands is it's a very vicious world,
Yeah.
um, and it is do or die. Um, and he's basically living. He's killing so he can live, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the just losing. losing that sense of like caring for other human beings as you go along is kind of, well, very indicative of what it feels like right now in this day and age. So, I mean, there's a lot of parallels to how I was feeling at the beginning of the year with certain things that our nation's leader has done. So it's a lot of rage and a lot of violence, and
it's very much a reflection, in a sense, of our time right now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a hard read for that, but it's also, I mean, it's very dark, but I had fun reading it at the same time, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a hard one. It's you know, I went into it also not assuming this was going to be a fun read for anyone. I mean, I think that a lot of the reason that people have not necessarily jumped on this one as opposed to the rest of the series is because of how different in flavor it is from the others. And it's maybe a little bit too much like what they're seeing and hearing on a daily basis in the news. So that's understandable.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any plans to continue the Deadlands at all, or is that it?
So, as of right now, we are, there is an omnibus, a special edition omnibus that is coming out in end of September, which includes the first 3 books and 2 short stories that are not published as of now. And then eventually I did want to write a follow-up to Nothingland, but it's not like the Deadlands as a series is completed, as it were. And I don't count Vulpine Curse as part of that series. So if I do write something new, it will be with, you know, Janet, and it will follow a different plot. It'll have different stakes, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention here too that you could read Vulpine Curse on its own without having read the other 3 books.
You can. I've had a couple of people say that you couldn't. So it's I think in order to really appreciate the Easter eggs, you can, you know, you can certainly you read the others and then you'll know who some of the other characters are that are mentioned. But I don't think it's necessary to know exactly who they are. It was meant to be read as a standalone, whether or not you had read the rest.
Personally, I like that kind of thing myself, and so I was glad that, you know, I added Vulpine Curse to my reading list for this interview, because it was kind of, that's where I had the fun, right? Like picking out all the things that I recognized from the trilogy. But I can see how it doesn't necessarily need to be a part of that of the series. It's just sort of like a book that's the story is adjacent to the rest of the series. Yeah,
same world, but very, very different feeling.
Absolutely. Now, you do a lot of your own covers because you work mostly from like your own publishing company. I know you've done a lot of them, at least. I don't know if you do them all, but
I've done all of them except for the book that's coming out in September is with Trueborn Press, and that's the first cover of a book that's mine that I have not done, and it's really cool.
It is beautiful. It kind of has your style to it, though. I imagine that they may have the book cover artist must have picked up on your style and used it, because I was like, this is totally Katherine Silva type of book cover style. But so I was gonna like give you a huge compliment on that book cover, but I guess it goes to the
It's
design.
Christina who is the editor-in-chief of Trueborn Press, does all of the covers for her books, and she's insane. She started out as a cover artist exclusively before starting Trueborn. So no, she's very, very good.
Nice. Up until is this your first time going with a different publisher?
It is. Yeah.
What made you decide to do that? Just curious.
I've been self-publishing for 15 years. I honestly, in order to expand my career and take the next step and do something else, I wanted to start putting my books out there, trying some different publishing companies, seeing if I can expand, because there's not really too much further for me to go in the self-publishing industry. It's just like, yeah, I can keep doing this and I can keep having similar similar things happen, I guess is the best way to put it, financially and in my own like sphere of people knowing my stuff. But I will never have the same kind of distribution or reach as other publishers do, and that's just a smart way of branching out.
Yeah, I agree totally. Is this like sort of where you're planning on going with your career, or do you think you'll always have a hybrid sort of publishing?
I really like what Gemma Moore does. She is a hybrid publisher and writer, and Todd Keisling also does it, and he's a good friend. And I really look up to people who can do both things. So I will probably still put out my own stuff, but I would like to be putting out more stuff with other presses. Nice. So I will be submitting more things to them. It's a question of whether or not it's what they're looking for. So
yeah, I want to give props to Todd Keisling, because I had him on the show recently, and we're going to get to the final question in a minute here. But when I asked him that question, he mentioned you, and that's what got me reading your work in the first place. I was like, okay, Todd mentioned Kat's work, and so I'm gonna go and dive in, and so that props to Todd. He's an awesome guy.
Todd's a good guy. Yeah.
All right, just a few more questions here, and then I shall let loose your chain and let you go. So since you write dark fiction, and a lot of it goes into like horrifying territory, or at least horror. Have you ever tackled any of your biggest fears in any of your stories?
Yes and no. A lot of my fears are like I've definitely tackled what comes with loss and grief multiple times. Being alone is certainly something that I've written about many times. Let's see. It's really just like little things now that I'm kind of having fun with, like fear of being underwater is something I don't talk about very often. I am not a strong swimmer. So having fear of things in the ocean and things that are deep in the ocean is something I'm currently writing about, and I have a few projects going on with. I had an insane dream last night that was very visual, that I will probably be writing about, that definitely hit on some fears. You know,
Have you ever done that before? Gotten an idea for a story from a dream?
I have. Yeah.
Nice. Do you suffer from like very vivid dreams very often?
No, not often now. I used to have pretty vivid dreams when I was younger, but it's pretty rare when I have them now. And I had two yesterday, which I will give the props to that migraine that I had. I think that might have had something to do with it, but no, I wrote my book. The collection is based on a dream that I had, which was about all of these taxidermy animals coming to life.
That sounds terrifying, right there.
Yeah.
I find that the whole taxidermy thing creepy on its own, in a sense, right?
I think they're cool, but
they are cool.
The idea of them coming back to life is really frightening. So.
Yeah, well, I have this thing about touching dead things. Like if you have a pet that dies on you, like a hamster or something, I couldn't touch it because I was afraid it would come back to life and bite me.
That's a terrifying thought.
It is. Especially when they're all stiff, right? And
I think I've seen too many dead mice for that to really worry me. We have, that New England, the old New England, cape with a million holes, and it's 100 years old, and there's mice everywhere, and we have a cat, so.
Yeah, well, I kind of got over that too because of the similar issues with the cat who loves mousing. So they often leave you presents.
Yes,
you don't necessarily want.
No, he's not as good a mouser as he used to be. But
I was listening to podcasts where your cat made it made itself known in that podcast. I forget which podcast it was, but you have the most awesome name for a cat.
Oh, Lemon Jelly.
Lemon Jelly, that's it. Yeah.
I
love that name.
Yeah, he's asleep right now, 'cause otherwise he would be all up in this. But no, he left me a half of a mouse on the couch once. Which I was sitting on. I didn't realize. And that was years ago, but not cool.
Yeah, not cool at all. You're like, I appreciate the gift, but next time, no, please don't. Which of your books would you like to see adapted to the big screen or as a television series?
Oh, it's hard. I mean, because I love Undead Folk. I think it could be a really cute short film. I say cute, but I think it could be a fun short film. Honestly, The Wild Dark probably has the most cinematic appeal to it. Howled Oblivion also could be. Of those three, I think. I
need to read The Wild Dark. I bought it a while ago because that was another way I was introduced to you. I think it was on TikTok. It was either TikTok or booktube, where people were going on and praising that book. And I added it to my TBR and I bought it, but you know how that goes.
Well, and it's also sizable. It's a chunky.
It's a chunky,
book.
Yeah. It's very chunky, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So final question. I try to ask this of everyone. I don't always, but I did manage to get to it with you. Which authors do you feel are neglected and you wish more people were discussing on social media?
Okay. I have a list
All right.
because
I got a pen, so.
yeah, I have some wonderful author friends who are not talked about enough. I mean, obviously, we're going to mention Todd because Todd's writing is insanely good, and he just
He is awesome. Sundowner's Dance was like mind blowing.
Sundowner's Dance is my favorite book of his, and yeah, it's a beautiful book.
It is.
I am also going to mention my friend Amanda Headlee, who is a phenomenal writer and has a book coming at the end of August. Maybe it's end of August, 1st of September, something like that, which I had the good fortune to read early, and it's very good.
What's the title of that book?
It's called How a Villain is Made, or This is How a Villain is Made, I believe. Also, notable people to mention. Tom Reimer, who is a fellow New England author who writes all kinds of supernatural goodness. Brennan Lafaro, who has a lot of different offerings, and certainly some really kick-ass Western offerings. Pauline Chow, who I'm reading right now.
Pauline? Is that Pauline?
Pauline, who wrote Chasing Moonflowers, which just came out recently. A very unique point of view. And Kyle Winkler is another.
Oh, Kyle, I've talked to him on the show.
And I'm reading his book right now, Beyond the Peerless. And it's fantastic and zany and weird, and it's so good.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned a couple of times your show. What is that exactly?
So I do an interview series during the winter, and it's called Winter Views because I am terrible with puns. And it will be the 5th season next year. But I've interviewed, usually it's like 8 people a season, and it's only between the months of January and then like early April, when I have downtime. And we talk about authors and their favorite subgenres in horror. And we usually keep it pretty fluent. Like there's not a lot of crossover. So we've talked about grief horror a lot because that one just naturally comes up.
Yeah.
But
where can people find that?
It's on YouTube. It's on my YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
So there's 4 seasons of that.
That's awesome. I'm going to go check that out because I didn't. That's something I did not. Well, I heard it in passing, I think, on other podcasts, and then you mentioning it here and there. But
it's very silly.
That's fine. That's fine.
But that does make me think of more people that I want to mention, especially because grief horror is my jam. And Sam Richard, who is the editor-in-chief of Weird Punk Press, definitely is somebody that people should read more.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sam is good people. And I feel like there was another one that floated up into my mind, and now it's like gone back down, and I feel really, really bad.
That happens. That happens.
Oh, Rob Smales.
Rob.
That's who it is. And it's Smales. Smales. Phenomenal short fiction author. Has a ton of stuff out there. Definitely
Awesome.
Worth looking up.
That's a great list of authors. There's only 2 of them that I've read, so
Okay,
I've got some homework to do.
cool.
All right, before we go, where can people catch you online if they want to keep updated? The best
So
place.
I am very active on Instagram. I'd say that's one of the best places. And Blue Sky is another one. And I am also on Facebook and on Threads, but less active in those 2.
Awesome. All right, so I want to thank you for coming on. I had a great time talking to you about your books and your writing process, and I want to extend an invitation to come back if you had fun here.
Yeah,
Sometime in the
absolutely.
future.
Sure.
And yeah, so I think that's it. Unless you have anything else you'd like to say.
I'm just going to mention the book that's coming out in September.
Mm-hmm.
If people are interested in the only book that I have not self-published, which is called Where the Soul Goes, and it's coming from Trueborn Press September 9th. And pre-orders are available right now, and it is grief horror and with like foodie happiness. It's got influences from like The Bear, I think would be probably the best thing to throw in there.
Awesome.
And yeah,
I want to thank you for sending me an e-arc for that. I was
sure.
hoping to at least read some of it, but you know how weekends go. You think you're going to have all this time to read, but it just doesn't happen.
Yep.
So I was being pretty ambitious with you over the emails, saying, "Oh, I'm going to get this read before Monday."
Yeah, I was like, "It's a big book."
Yeah, that there's always that niggling thought in the back of your skull. It's like, come on, man, get real. But I totally plan on reading it because I absolutely love your work. And thank you again for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good.